Hello, my name is Rosemarie, and I will be doing the negative for the legalization of prostitution. So prostitution has been known to be one of the world's oldest professions, and although it is legal in places such as France, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, the effect that the legalization will have not only on workers but on society as a whole is much more complex and harder to foresee in countries where it hasn't been legalized, because although prostitution is legal in these places, much of the workers are still victims of crime because the legalization of prostitution is one of the root causes for human trafficking. Another reason is sex work brings a lot of violence involved in it, so making it bigger will only make more violence happen. And lastly, the decriminalization of the sex industry is not just the worker, but everything involved in it. The legalization of prostitution is one of the root causes for human trafficking. In 2000, the Dutch government considered sex work to be an economic activity. It was enabling women from other countries to obtain work permits as sex workers as long as they could prove that they were self-employed. So after this, it was reported that a lot of the traffickers were using these work permits to bring foreign women in and using the permits to cover up the fact that they were being trafficked, basically, and they were being coached to say that they were just here as migrant workers. And these women were mostly kidnapped, and they were probably beaten and threatened, so they were willing to say whatever they had to say to keep themselves alive. Another reason why sex work should not be legalized is because sex work has a lot of violence involved in it. Testimonies taken from some cops said that women involved in prostitution were amongst the most demographically to be stabbed, to be beaten, to be raped, and to be murdered. So just legalizing it will just bring more people involved, more establishments involved, and it will just make everything much more bigger. And lastly, decriminalization, the sex industry is not just decriminalizing the worker, it's decriminalizing the establishments, the brothels, the spas, and the pimps. It's making pimps not pimps anymore, but maybe more sex entrepreneurs, and it's allowing people to think that it's okay to purchase somebody for sex. So these are amongst the reasons why sex work should not be legalized.
That prostitution would create violence, but wouldn't legalizing prostitution make more regulations and make the police more involved?
So legalizing prostitution would bring in more law enforcement, and it would bring in more regulations, but just because something is legal doesn't mean that illegal things are happening behind closed doors, or that shady things aren't happening. Take these two different studies into consideration. In one study, 146 workers in 5 different countries were interviewed in establishments that were both legal and illegal, and 80% of them stated that they had suffered abuse in the hands of a handler or in the hands of a client. And in another study, 186 workers were interviewed, and they consistently stated that establishments were more concerned with the safety of the client and the safety of the establishment, and not the safety of the worker. And also, legalizing prostitution would increase more violence because it would be taking something and just be putting it in a bigger scale. So if you take anything and just maximize it, of course there's going to be more violence occurring.
Okay. Isn't legalizing prostitution a victimless crime because it's two consenting adults coming together to an agreement? And wouldn't it be better for the workers because they would get a routine SED checks, like routinely? And lastly, wouldn't it be better for the economy because it would bring in more taxes and save police money?
Okay. So, prostitution is not a victimless crime because it is one of the lead causes for human trafficking in the world. So this is people who are getting kidnapped against their own will, or they're being brought somewhere and being forced to do something that they don't want to do. Also, people are being abused every day. They're being physically abused and are being mentally abused in this industry. Also stating that routine STD checks, making routine STD checks mandatory if they became legal. A worker can take as many precautions as they can. They can try to be as safe. They can take all the STD check tests, but that's not going to stop a client from coming in and infecting them, or another client, and then who's holding them accountable? You're holding the worker accountable, so there should also be a regulation to hold the client accountable who wants to partake in these activities. Lastly, legalizing prostitution would be good for the economy because it would bring in more money through taxes, and it would save law enforcement money. But if you think about it, who is this benefiting first? This is benefiting the government. It is benefiting law enforcement. It is benefiting all the establishments that are involved in this industry, like the brothels, the spas. It is benefiting the pimps. And who is it leaving, towards the end? It's leaving the worker. It's not thinking about the worker. Places where this is legal, workers have stated that they're still being abused, and that their establishments don't want to take care of them, and they don't want to protect them. They're just interested in money and business. This is just business for them, and we need to remember that at the end of the day, these are also people who have lives, who are just like us, and they too deserve, if this is legalized, they deserve to be respected as well, and not just be seen as another business venture. So the legalization of prostitution should not happen at this moment until all these other factors could get resolved. Thank you.